Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Playwright Dialogues. I'm Matt Lindsay, Chair of the Dayton Playhouse Board of Directors, and it is my hope that everyone out there is well and in good spirits. The Playwright Dialogues are being produced as part of Dayton Playhouse's alternative programming for FutureFest 2020. You can go to our website, DaytonPlayhouse.com, for a complete schedule of our FutureFest 2020 activities for the summer. These Playwright Dialogues are our opportunity to get to know or to meet the 6 FutureFest finalist playwrights and listen in as they talk about their scripts, inspirations for their work, and themes within their plays. For each of the Playwright Dialogues, 3 in total, I am joined by 2 of our FutureFest finalist playwrights. And for this final of 3 dialogues, I am joined by Kevin Cirone, author of The Good Deli, and Kimberly Shimer, author of A Ghost of a Chance. Some brief introductions. Kevin Cirone is an emerging playwright and actor from the Boston area, entertaining audiences across New England, New York, and beyond. In addition to his FutureFest script, The Good Deli, Cirone wrote Creative License, a new musical, and Whiskey Neat, a selection of the Boston Theater Marathon. Cirone is a first-time FutureFest finalist. Kimberly Shimer is just now pursuing a newly discovered passion for playwriting. The Director of Communications for Villanova University's College of Engineering, and recently an empty nester, Shimer enrolled in a graduate program in Villanova's theater department. Though her goal was to train as an actor, she fell in love with playwriting. A Ghost of a Chance is her first play. Kimberly Shimer and Kevin Cirone, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your selections as FutureFest 2020 finalists.
Thank you very much. Yeah, happy to be here.
It's a great pleasure to be able to speak with both of you. Now, pairing you 2 together was an easy call. Your 2 comedy plays, very funny comedy plays, center on very strong, very funny women, female characters. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. Kevin Cirone, your play, The Good Deli, centers around Jules, a stand-up comic in the Boston area who decides to assist her father in fulfilling a dying wish. And the journey they take is more than just the miles they travel. So please share with us the inspiration for this play and tell us about its journey to where it is today.
Sure. Yeah. So The Good Deli is based somewhat on some real experiences I had involving my own father and some health issues that he had over a period of years. You know, it was interesting. What I found, so my relationship with him and my family was always sort of, I don't know, complicated, I guess. But I found the hospital aspect of the play and the sort of the reconnection of the family members during that time period, during the sort of the illness and the sort of the initial sort of shock of Wilfred's health scare. The reconnection there and the sort of the interrelationships I found really, really interesting. And you know, it's interesting how a situation like that can really bring people together. And that was something I felt like within myself as it was actually like happening. And then the idea, you know, arose, you know, somewhat after that situation, because, you know, we really were, you know, sitting there in a hospital with him for 30 or 40 days. He had a series of just awful stuff. And, but sometime thereafter, you know, he had this idea that he wanted to go, he wanted to take a little trip down to Boston, and there was this, you know, this Italian bakery and deli that he really liked. And so there was this road trip that we had, and you know, we're all family, and like, you know, it was a bit of it was just a whole a bit of an ordeal where we were just kind of the organization of like getting everybody together, and like none of us really knew where it was, and we were, you know, stopping for directions, and just it was one of those sort of situations that kind of like, you know, you couldn't too much make up. Obviously some of it within The Good Deli is fictionalized, and there are, you know, different relationships and different characters that are you know, have been added to that situation. But yeah, it was a lot of, you know, real conversations, or at least real, I don't want to say real conversations, but a lot of real interrelationships, and real, you know, sort of just the frantic nature of that whole situation. And so like overlaying those two events, and seemed like a really interesting idea for a play. And I sort of even thought that while it was happening, I'm like, oh, this would just be a really good play someday. It's just such a you can't make this up. Yeah, so I think I felt that immediately, which is a weird, I guess a weird reaction to have, you know, but like alongside everything else that goes on with one of those situations. So yeah, I think that's kind of where it began, and how the sort of the roots of that were some real experiences I had as a, you know, as a performer and as a writer, and you know, as a family member, as a son. So I guess if that answers your question.
It does, and
Yeah.
it's interesting, and I hope we'll get into talking about. I mean, this is obviously a very deep and moving and meaningful moment in your life, and you turned it into something very funny for your audience. So, Kimberly Shimer, in your play, Evelyn, the central character in A Ghost of a Chance, is a recently deceased insurance actuarial given a 3-day opportunity to, I can't even say it without, a 3-day opportunity to return to Earth and reconcile with her now widowed husband after a long and not so ideal marriage. Please tell us where this inspiration came from, and how, and its journey to where it is today.
Well, you know, I don't have a great answer for where it came from. It started in a playwriting 101 class that I took at Villanova. I guess it's been 3 years now, so it took 3 years to get to a place where I thought it was good enough to put out into the world and see what would happen with it. But in our very first class, we were told to write down 20 ideas for plays, you know, just kind of stream of conscious, just go write. And when originally my idea, I think I wrote it down as Harry, his wife has died. He decides he wants to start online dating, but his wife comes back and she wants to weigh in on his choices. So it evolved a bit from that. But my professor, Michael Hollinger, who was really just instrumental in inspiring me to write, he wrote next to it fun, and that's kind of all the encouragement I needed to take that idea and run with it. There are definitely elements of it that are reflective of some long-term marriages I know that probably shouldn't be as long-term as they are. And there are pieces like Harry is a frustrated inventor, if you will. He invented a Christmas tree holder that he wanted to patent, and that's based on my dad. My dad actually did invent one heck of a Christmas tree holder that would withstand any hurricane. So so there's that. But yeah, it was purely just a comedic idea. I also think that most men of a certain age, you know, older men, if you will, I think if their wife dies first, I think a lot of them will get remarried because they're completely incapable of taking care of themselves. So I think that's part of why Harry was looking to date right away. You know, it's like, well, who's going to cook for me? Who's going to clean? Somebody's got to do my laundry. So maybe there's part of that in there too.
And do I hear from both of you that these plays were several years in the simmering process, in the development process?
For sure, for me, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I mean, literally 3 years. So.
Yeah, it's been a period of years. I mean, I started sort of writing some of the stuff as it was sort of happening, like in bits and pieces, and Yeah, so I mean, the actual events, I mean, even having that was a couple of years, and then I've spent some time kind of developing the ideas and polishing it a little bit over some time. So yeah, it's been 3 or 4 years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, the years well spent. These are very funny plays, but I want to get to this. It's a question that I sent to you in advance. In both of your plays, you have these very funny central characters who are dealing with issues of mortality. And so I'm interested in both of your thoughts about that intersection between comedy and death. I mean, why does that work?
Personally, I think it's just humor for me has always been a coping mechanism. And I think that when it comes to death, I mean, there's probably no more uncomfortable and difficult subject. So what better way for someone like me at least, to deal with an uncomfortable, difficult subject than to temper it with humor. And, there's just, everything about it is a mystery. So I think we can do with it a million things.
Yeah, I agree about especially the coping mechanism part of it. I think that was, I mean, that's very key, especially, if you're dealing with it yourself is having that. But I also think it's very relatable. I mean, it's the one thing we all have in common is we all have to deal with it. I think, looking at it through that lens and tempering that with comedy, with humor, and I think, I think that's very important. And I think it really, it takes the edge off, but it also, there's also something very human about it. The sort of the gallows humor, if you will, of dealing with death and dealing with mortality, because like I said, it's something that everybody has to go through at some point. Right.
So both of your plays also, touch on religion, but in unconventional or surprising ways. The mystery of death is often intertwined with subjects of religion. So what are your thoughts about how do you approach bringing religion into your writing?
Again, I feel like everybody, speaking broadly, like it's another one of it sort of goes along with the mortality thing, that it's something that a lot of people have in common. Like everybody has this idea of a higher power, this idea of something bigger, like beyond us. And I do think that's very relatable and a necessary conversation for people to have. The specificity of there's a Catholic priest in my play, and so, or an ex-priest, I should say. And I mean, I have, I came to religion in sort of a weird time in my life. I sort of converted for a marriage, and then got divorced, and so my experience of Catholicism was as an adult, and so I think it's really interesting to have that sort of the idea. They say about religion that they want to get you young, so that it's like sort of more ingrained in you. And for me, it was like more of like a choice I made, which is interesting. And so, and I'm a terrible Catholic. I just want to make sure that that's very clear. So I think having that lens and the difference between choosing religion in some fashion versus having it ingrained in you at a young age is different. And I always like the idea of sort of exploring that, and even like small ways. Like I'm definitely not somebody who wants to beat anybody over the head with religion or with a particular belief system of any kind. But I think it's important that we acknowledge that people have beliefs and people have these feelings about, and people are searching for answers and meaning and what have you. And I think there's a way to be funny about that, and without being preachy. I think that's important. As far as making that a palatable and not irreverent or disrespectful in any way necessarily. Yeah, so that's kind of
Jules's connection with the priest in your play is primarily via text messaging, which I think is a very modern,
right.
very adult, perhaps, approach to connecting with your faith, or or with a counselor of faith. So I think that was a really interesting piece of your play. So in Kimberly, in your play, we have a sort of apathetic angel-like figure through. Tell us about how you thought about incorporating, a unique take on religion within your play.
I think, religion, like death, is just kind of rife with mystery and different thoughts on what it will be like. And in this case, Evelyn was somebody who, seems to have been raised in the church, because when she gets to the afterlife data center, she says to Sydney, what's going on here? I thought I would just go to heaven. And, for anybody who kind of grew up in faith and, was taught to believe that they've been saved, you just assume when you're going to go to heaven, right? So imagine, you get up there and it's an afterlife data center where they have records on everything you've ever said and done. And it just doesn't quite work out the way she planned. Also, I like the idea of, what if we could fix the things that we did wrong? Especially if there was one big thing that we had a chance for a do-over on. How would we handle that? And I think it's also interesting is Harry clearly throughout doesn't quite understand the nuances of the faith in which he was married into, which is interesting. Kevin saying you chose to marry into the faith. Throughout, Harry's like, well, can we do an exorcism? And his daughter's like, Dad, we're Presbyterians. We don't do exorcisms, So, and I think that there is an all too common thread where husbands and wives aren't necessarily on a faith journey together. You see a lot in the church, or at least I did, women who gravitate toward their faith and wish they could drag their husbands along, but maybe only get them there on Christmas and Easter. So Harry's a very real example of one who it just didn't quite stick for him. And for Evelyn, it was just kind of a rude awakening when she gets to this place where it wasn't just, hey, here are the pearly gates. In fact, there are no pearly gates in A Ghost of a Chance. There's a very methodical system in place, more like the Department of Motor Vehicles than the pearly gates. So.
Is that perhaps a special fate for insurance actuarials?
Perhaps. And she, that wasn't actually a job title for her. That was more her personality speaking. She just, everything she saw, she knew the statistics behind and could beat you down with them. So
let's talk about your central characters. Both of your plays feature very strong, very funny women characters. And I want to know if you found any particular joys or challenges in writing funny women characters.
I'd say as a funny, strong woman, no, it was easy. But no, I think in general that strong women have always struggled with how to be strong and likable, unfortunately. There's this tendency, if you're strong, you're labeled a bitch, that kind of thing. And so again, I think just like I said, humor is a coping mechanism for me. I think it's also a way that some women, we temper our strength with humor to make it a little more palatable, to make us a little more likable. If we can say difficult things that need to be said, but with humor, then perhaps we won't offend anyone. And like I said, we'll just be more likable that way. So I think that's why I chose to write Evelyn the way I did. That she's got a strong personality. She could come off as quite unlikable. So I had to try to balance that out.
Kevin?
Well, I mean, also speaking as a strong woman, I also found it very easy. No, yeah, it was very, it was very interesting, and I found it rewarding. It definitely, it's definitely a different challenge to you know, cottoning onto a lot of what Kim said. But I think, you know, fundamentally, you know, there shouldn't be that much. I mean, there are very specific differences between men and women, especially, you know, in these days where there's so much attention being paid to equality and identity politics and all of that. But fundamentally, I mean, it should be, you know, I guess I had the advantage too of having somebody who performed for a living. So there's always this sense, I think, for Jules of feeling like she has to be on, you know, like you know, the humor is a coping mechanism, but it's also like she almost copes for a living. So and so, like, I think that feeds into a lot of her personality and a lot of her choices and the relationships, you know, as she sort of you know, works to kind of repair them throughout the play. But you know, but I also think, you know, having a bit of a performing background myself, I also like am very in tune of like what that kind of means and what sort of personalities that I guess also, like, as an audience member, that I find interesting and that I find like the kinds of the backgrounds and the kinds of humor that Jules has, I found really interesting to write in that sense. Yeah.
You said you mentioned your performing background, and Jules is a stand-up comic. Have you been on the comic circuit in Boston as well, or do you know colleagues who have been that?
More colleagues. I've very rudimentarily done some stand-up comedy, but mostly I've been acting, stage acting, and a little bit of film, but mostly very bad film. So yeah, it's mostly the stage performance. You know, not wanting it. So part of it being a comedian was, you know, well, this is sort of this has a different edge to it than somebody who's a theater actor, because it's sort of a different medium and a different, you know, kind of audience. And at the same time, I also didn't want to just straight out be like, this character is me except a woman. But so I did want to. I wanted some delineation there, but also, like, I think it led to a different some different choices and some different personality traits.
It's a fascinating play where you get to see some of her vulnerabilities, particularly when she's interacting with Patrick, the priest.
Peter.
Name right? Yeah. And then also when she's, you know, she's got her guard up and she's got her the face that she always gives to her family. I'm sure it would be a character that many actors would love to tackle.
Mm.
And same with Evelyn. We see all of the, you know, the struggles she goes through to accept, you know, what her faults were, and see how she can go about making that reconciliation. Also a great role. So congratulations to you both. So both of your plays are currently, as we speak today, in mid-June, in rehearsal for our streaming presentations through the Dayton Playhouse. So we're very excited, and they're cast, and they're going to be really, really good productions. I'm very much looking forward to how we're going to be doing this. I'm glad we could at least do some of our plays this year. And so, but what other than that, what lies in the future for your plays? Are you working on? Well, let me just make it an open-ended question. What are the next steps for your plays, Kimberly?
Well, it's Ghost of a Chance is also a finalist in the B Street Theater Comedies Festival, and also a women's playwriting competition at a Centenary College in Hackettstown, New Jersey. So it's got a couple possible other options that might come along, which would be exciting for me. But I'm also working on a couple other shows. Actually, you know, when we were talking about faith, I'm not sure why I gravitated toward that topic, but another play that I've started, also a comedy, is called A Question of Faith. And it's about a woman who's grown up with not an ounce or second of exposure to religion in any way, shape, or form, no knowledge of the Bible, nothing. But she falls for just a really good looking, super devout Christian guy. And so she decides to try to fake it, her knowledge of the Bible and his faith and going to Bible studies. And, so what could possibly go wrong? So I'm having some fun with that. And then I'm just about to finish another play, which is a completely different approach, but I don't know if there's a legend around Franz Kafka, the author, that says in his last year of life, supposedly he was living in Berlin, and he and his girlfriend at the time run into a little girl who's lost her doll in the park. And to make her feel better, he tells her that this doll has gone on an adventure on a trip, and that he collects all the doll mail in Berlin, and so he will deliver letters to her from her doll wherever she is taking these adventures around the world. So I created a play around that with these fantastical letters that he writes to her as her doll, and the relationship that develops there. So it's a little softer, not a comedy, but something that I gravitated towards. So,
how about you, Kevin? What's next for The Good Deli, and are you working on other things?
Yeah. So the pandemic has complicated things a bit, but I did have a production that was planning to go up in Boston probably next spring, but I think that's going to be pushed to the following fall. Hoping to have sort of like a workshop production of that here in the Boston area. And there was some interest in a production in Washington State over, again, that was supposed to take place in the summer. I think they're probably going to push it to next year sometime. Those are the breaks. But and I'm working on a couple of other full lengths. One's sort of an exploration of technology and how corporations are involved in the development of technology, for better or for worse. Speaking in very broad strokes, because it's still in very early stages right now. And a comedy about people who perform as princesses for children's birthday parties, and
sounds good.
And then rob the houses in which they are. So that's coming soon. But so those are the two new projects coming, hopefully.
That's terrific. Best of luck to both of you on your Future Fest plays and the other projects that you're working on. And thank you both for taking some time out of your day to talk with us and our audience here in Dayton about your plays. And we look forward to the streaming productions of your works coming up in July. And congratulations again to both of you for being named Future Fest 2020 finalists.
Thank you so much.
It's been a terrific pleasure to speak with you both.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So to our audience, please find your way over to the Dayton Playhouse YouTube channel to find all of our Playwright dialogues, all 3 that are available for you to view, and to meet with all of the 6 Future Fest finalists. And of course, as I said before, you can go to our website, DaytonPlayhouse.com, for a complete schedule of our Future Fest alternative programming events for summer, and also to purchase tickets to our 3 streaming presentations during the Future Fest week. And I thank you all for joining us, and be well.